네, 함께 해주신 여러분 대단히 감사합니다. 자, 이제
Thank
2025
you
김대중
for being
평화회의
back.
3일차 오늘의 마지막 세션을
Now we
시작하도록
have
하겠습니다.
one
바로
last
청년
session
평화
ahead of
라운드
us, which is
테이블인데요.
Youth Peace
이번 시간은 세계
Roundtable.
각지에서 평화를 위해 활동하는 청년들의 목소리를
We
직접 듣고
invited
또 각 지역의
the young
현실과 우리가
members
함께
who are
나눌 수
working
있는
around the world.
실천적인 행동들에 대해서
We will be
이야기를 하기
discussing
위해서
what will be the
마련되었습니다.
practical
이번
solution
논의를
to
통해서
get
새로운
through
세대가
all the
만들어갈
crisis.
평화의 길에
Through the
대한
discussion,
통찰과
we
희망을
will
얻을
see
수
the
있기를
insight and hope
바라겠습니다.
for the peaceful
마지막 세션인 만큼 끝까지
coexistence.
함께하셔서 더 큰
And
울림을
I hope
나누는
you
시간
can be
되시기를
with us
진심으로
until the
바라겠습니다.
very
자,
end.
그럼 이번 시간 좌장님을 비롯한
Now
세
I would
분의
like
패널
to
여러분들을 바로
invite
무대 위로
our
모셔보도록
moderator and
하겠습니다.
three
이번
panelists.
세션 좌장을 맡아주실
The moderator
공덕의
is
사전 모임
Mr.
오이석
Eui-seok,
대표님
Head
올라주시고요.
Director
또
of
패널로 함께
Gongsamo.
해주실 세 분
And the
소개하겠습니다.
panelists
올라주십시오.
are
세계보건기구 서태평양 사무처
Mr. Lee Jong-hyuk, Technical Officer from
액션에이드 베트남 사무처
WHO Regional
조영석
Office
부가시아
for
수석
Western
정책본부님,
Pacific, and
그리고
Mr.
라오스
Yong-suk,
그린굿즈
Senior
이재원
Policy Advisor for
대표님이십니다.
North Asia and ActionAid Vietnam.
평화 라운드 테이블
And
시작합니다.
lastly, we
여러분,
have
박수로 맞이해주시기
Mr. Lee
바랍니다.
Jaewon, CEO of Greengoods, Laos.
네, 안녕하십니까. 지금부터 저희
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Let me open the Youth Peace Roundtable, which is about the people making place lived there. I am Eui-seok, the head director of Gongsamo.
네, 저희가 이 김대중 평화 회의의 마지막 세션을 맡아달라라는 요청을
We are
받았을 때
asked to take charge of the last session of this Kim Dae-jung Peace Forum. We are very delighted to be asked, but at the same time we feel burdened to lead the last session. But I see a great turnout, so we get encouraged and inspired by your presence. I hope we can fill your time with great insight and hope. As introduced, we are the activists in international cooperation. Our work field are the different corners of the world. We have been working about the loans, the international aid, international assistance. These days, our activities are captured in the world of ODA. These days, we have much heard about the Cambodia ODA and Ukrainian aid with grant. So there are the mixed images of both negative and positive. However, anyway, we will deal with this topic in a hopeful manner. We have been engaged in the international relations, international aid. We started our career in our 20s. Our ages are different across the 20s, 30s, and 40s. At least we have experience of 10 years in this field, so we have observed a lot of things and built great experiences of helping and cooperating with local communities. And that those activities and businesses are addressed by my organization, Gongsamo. And Gongsamo is currently a social enterprise or social cooperative. And the Gongsamo could be known to you thanks to the former First Lady Kim Gon-il's visit to Cambodia. At that time, we gathered the signatures of 20 or 30,000 people. And at that time, we let the case known to the country, to the Korea, and to the known. And today, we will be sharing our experience and what we learned from that experience with you to set the direction for the future activities overall. Let me introduce our panelists. As I introduce each of them, please welcome them with a warm round of applause. To my right, I have Mr. Lee Jong-hyuk. He is technical officer from WHO based in the Philippines. Today, he will be talking about his experience when he seconded to Rwanda. He is, yes, ladies and gentlemen, please welcome him. with a warm round of applause.
국제 NGO 중에 액션에이드라는
And among many NGOs, there is one organization to be known as ActionAid. Maybe the Korean branch is not operating in Korea. However, ActionAid is well known around the world. The gender equality, climate crisis are the main field they are working on. He is currently based in Vietnam and serving as a senior policy advisor. He has been based in Vietnam for 10 years, and he married to a Vietnamese woman. So his work and families are all both families and work are based in Vietnam. He was Mr. Jong-hyuk, and one of the most beautiful country in Southeast Asia is Laos. Our last speaker is from Laos, the beautiful country. He built a business model there with entrepreneurship. So he is trying to build a better future there. He is the CEO of Greengoods, Mr. Jaewon. Now, according to this order, we will hear from them. Each presentation will be about 15 minutes. After that, we will deal with the questions that are already presented, as well as the impromptu question from the floor. First, Mr. Jong-hyuk.
이종혁님 같은 경우는 르완다의 사례로서 평화에 대한 이야기를
Our speaker is going to talk about how peace was established in Rwanda. As you may well know, Rwanda is regarded as Singapore of Africa, which means Rwanda is known for its advancement, but to existing generation, that there are scars of civil conflicts when it comes to Rwanda. So how did Rwanda advance to be what it is now after the scars of the civil conflicts? So please welcome our speaker, Mr. Lee from WHO, who used to work in Western Pacific Regional Office. Thank you so much for giving me this opportunity to speak as one of the panelists at this important forum. I am going to talk to you about the Rwanda genocide and the lessons learned and the mechanism of reconciliation in the field. The quick question is very simple but difficult. How can we live together after the genocide? I saw and experienced that you need institutions, relations, and the languages you use in order to achieve reconciliation through forgiveness. So there are three things that I want to tell you about. We need to have victim-centered forgiveness. We have to respect the time required for victims to forgive the perpetrators. And also, we need courage to live in the same village. Reconciliation and forgiveness cannot be coerced. It requires technical mechanism, for example, gachacha court, so that you can rebuild a community that is based on reconciliation and forgiveness. Let me briefly introduce to you about Rwanda. Rwanda is in the African Great Lakes region, especially the Victoria Lake, and the Hutu, Tutsi, Tuwa are the ethnic groups, and now the major industries are tourism and others. Because of the geographical location and because of the history, there was a disastrous event such as the Rwanda genocide. And as for the ethnic groups Hutu, Tutsi, Tuwa, I will explain to you in further details later on. And the reconciliation was also based on the relations. For about 100 days, neighbors killed neighbors in 1994 nationwide. There was propaganda, hate hatred-centered propaganda, inciting people to kill one another, and more than 1 million people were killed. That is called the Rwanda genocide, and the reality was devastating. You had to live with the perpetrators who killed your family members, and the level of hatred was great high, and it was really difficult to punish everyone, and that's why they paid attention back to the Gachacha court. Let me explain to you what this is. There were four missions that they had to pursue. One is getting the justice and truth finding and healing and guaranteeing safety, and also building up the safety mechanism so that the same thing will not be repeated. The reality was that victims and perpetrators had to live in the same villages, going to the same church. But they required much time to cry, to share their stories, and to reject perpetrators for asking for forgiveness. They needed time to heal. The gachacha in the local language means grass or a village assembly. This is a community-based dispute resolution which asks for the truth-telling, judicial responsibility, reconciliation facilitation, and social reintegration. Reconciliation does not put the label of monster on perpetrators. The reconciliation is about asking the responsibility by the perpetrators to ask for forgiveness. In each of the villages, there are gachacha courts, and there are 8 to 9 community judges, and the perpetrators and victims come, and they make confessions and ask for apology. And when such confession is made and apology is accepted, sentence could be reduced, and they can do their serving by they can pay for what they did for community service and reparations. For about 12 years, the adoption of gachacha court went on, and there are downsides and outcomes out of this gachacha system. Let me first talk to you about the outcomes of the gachacha court. About 1.9 million cases were handled by 12,000 plus gachacha courts. And victims were able to identify the location of their deceased family members. And also, one of the key outcomes was to encourage participants to confirm that they will not repeat the same wrongdoings. And one may think that gachacha courts generated only good outcomes, but there were limitations. But a proxy and the misjudgment were one of the limitations, and also those sexually assaulted victims had to make testimonies, which was another form of violation. And also, the court's forgiveness is one of the limitations specified as the limitations of the gachacha system. That's why there was a strong need for victim-centered procedures and case-specific specialization and everyday healing routines, and the appeal system had to be refined. Reconciliation and forgiveness, there is a clear line, and kindness without boundary is not a true kindness. So gachacha court is not the only mechanism through which they wanted to mend the situation. There was a committee, National Unity and Reconciliation Commission, NURC. And also there was a umuganda system, which means they invited everyone to do the community service work on the last Saturday of each month. Income was generated, fertilizer was provided. Reconciliation and forgiveness have been intertwined through many programs, such as 우무간다, and also by the efforts made by DNURC. 우부문투 means being human. So this is a belief that a person becomes whole through their relations with others. They take care of their children together. They work at a farm together. So there are villages named as reconciliation villages. Perpetrators go to build houses for victims. They do physical activities together so that they can truly accept apologies from perpetrators, and the victims can truly provide their forgiveness to perpetrators. So what are the outcomes out of these efforts like Umun Buntu? The outcomes are sustained economic growth, and the environment was improved. As for 2004 to 2019, the average economic growth rate recorded 7.7%. And the daily routine income generation have been bettered. The main outcome out of such efforts is conflicts is not far away along the road. When you build a healthy ecosystem, you can reduce the possibility of same thing happening repeatedly. So what did I learn from this?
첫째로 진실과 책임은 출발선입니다.
Truth and responsibility have to start at the same time. You seek truth and you take responsibility. And the next lesson that I learned is the contextual and top-down integration. Policy needs to support the integration. And third lesson that everyone learned is the victim-centered approach. You should not force everyone to participate, and you have to give sufficient time for healing. And reconciliation has to be part of the daily life and the policy making. So I believe forgiveness and reconciliation are two means to make your daily life safe. Rwanda did not forget the genocide. But that genocide and that memory shall not be the fuel of vengeance. Genocide never again has become the philosophy of the government. Forgiveness is not being weak. It is the power that rearranges the future path. And reconciliation and forgiveness is not just one time off. And we should take lessons from the Rwanda genocide case to reflect in our setting. Our former president said we have to mend poor institutions, but you never take revenge on other people. He expanded the idea into inter-Korean relations. You do not give up on people. You ask them to take responsibility, and you ensure the safety of the next generation. In the future, if we have to prepare for peace again, we have to record our past wrongdoings and promote reconciliation and focus on interactions among the stakeholders. This is a youth roundtable. There are 3 questions that I want to ask to our youth. Are we ready to let go of our hatred? Because if you hold on to hatred, it is not easy to forgive the other and reconcile with the other. You have to understand how much hatred is impacting your life. Forgiving someone is not saying that you are weak. It's a choice that you can make. And also you have to respect the relations between victims and perpetrators. And also I'd like to ask the second question. What form should Gachacha take in our own society? Gachacha court is a venue led by the community where perpetrators are asked for their wrongdoings, and given chance to forgive, to ask for apologies. It could be online in our setting. The key here is not labeling perpetrators as monsters, but try to find a way to overcome the disputes and the conflicts and move toward a future.
하는 실천
And the next one we should ask is what shall be the daily acts of reconciliation? What makes forgiving possible? In our daily life, what we can do is to listen to the messages and other voices and taking small steps for through cooperation so that we can actually practice forgiveness. But the one important thing to remember is that we shall never coerce anyone to forgive others. Forgiveness does not change the past, it expands the future. We do not erase the past, but we can preserve our memories safely so that we can deter the repetition of any event like a genocide. So let's do what we can do in our position.
김대중 대통령께서는 독실한 카톨릭 신자셨던
Former President Kim was a Catholic,
그래서 사랑의 정치라고 얘기했는데
faithful Catholic. So he talked about the love of politics. So I
13장 4절인데
remember this Corinthians 13:4. Love is patient and enduring. Love is gentle and kind. Love does not envy or resent. Love does not boast or show off. I saw this form of love is manifested in Rwanda. So we can start from remembering the words of love. Let's institutionalize love into daily practice. Thank you so much for your kind attention.
감사합니다. 사실 르완다의 사례, 르완다 학살에
If you look at the Rwanda genocide, you must be well aware of it, and you must be wondering what actions have been taken after the Rwanda genocide. What kind of leadership has been shown to mend the ties after the Rwanda genocide. The community-led ruling system, the judgment system, gachacha court, was somewhat new to all of us Koreans. Gachacha is not just giving a trial in a court to perpetrators and victims, but it's a way of practicing justice in our daily life. It's not like a grand goal of realizing justice, but just for the sake of living together. It is about building a philosophy that we can follow in our daily life. And what is impressive is forgiveness shall not be coerced, it shall be given voluntarily. Forgiveness shall not be for someone else, but it shall be for your own good, at your own speed. I lived in Ansan Siheung for a long time, and I remember the Sewol accident, Sewol accident. And some people might say, why do we still need to talk about the ferry Sewol accident? So victims should be given the choice to give forgiveness at their own speed. It shall not be coerced. So this is something that we can think about from the case of Rwanda genocide. So what thoughts did you have while preparing for this presentation? While preparing for today's talk, I thought since it was a youth roundtable, I thought the audience is going to be the youth. But whenever I talk about peace and love among the young generations, many of them are divided because of the ideological ideas or different thoughts, whether it is women versus men, left versus right, or the boss versus junior, or the way you eat the sweet and sour pork dish. But even though there are differences, you can love the other, beyond the differences that you might have. You might have. Thank you so much. Now I would like to shed light on the Vietnamese case. We'd like to welcome our next panelist.
베트남에서의 통일, 통일이 된
Mr. Jo Yong-suk saw the Vietnamese unification, in which Korea is not pursuing unification in that way. So the current Vietnamese, the young generation has their own perspective onto their unification. With that, we may imagine what will be like after Korean unification. So let us invite Mr. Jo Yong-suk.
네, 안녕하십니까.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. I am Jo Yong-suk from ActionAid Vietnam. The title of my presentation is Unification with the Korean Peninsula, Learning from Vietnam. December last year, a serious crisis took place in Korea. It was more than democratic crisis threatening peace on the Korean Peninsula. The group risked to invite the war, greatly threatening peace of the Korean Peninsula. In this incomprehensible situation, we have to think about the peace of the Korean Peninsula. The martial law or insurrection was used as a tool for a certain political group to continue their power. Division does not mean just aspiration for whole the people. The division was manipulated by a certain group to be used for their own benefit and favor. That destabilized the Korean Peninsula and the threat and security of the Korean people. 2025 is the 80th year of the Korean War. At this moment, what can be said about unification among the younger generation? Unification seems to be a very distant idea for them because the young generation have not experienced the division directly, and the North Korea is the subject of mockery or teaching. Sometimes the young generation is indifferent to unification. So the older generation just use the unification agenda for their own political agenda. So that's why the younger generation does not pay much serious attention to the unification. That's why the discussion on the unification is much contracted or almost non-existent. Nevertheless, I want to ask and try to answer to that. If I'm asked whether we need unification, I would say absolutely yes. If amidst the indifference of the younger generation, unification is the practical and the ideal task for us to have a benefit and to have a better world. Today is not the venue to discuss unification. However, as a member of younger generation living present day, I want to look to Vietnam and as a person who witnessed the the unified Vietnam, I want to say something about it. As I am one of the younger generation in Korea, I had a class about the unification, and in the elementary school, I watched the Inter-Korean Summit in the middle of the class, and after that I was in the military when Lee Myung-bak took power. After that I went to Vietnam and spent there for 10 years, and I met my spouse there. While living in Vietnam, I borrowed the Vietnamese perspective to look into the world. And at the 50th anniversary of Vietnam unification, I acquired a hint from those countries to be applied to the Korean unification. Two countries are very different. Even though they are different, there are something that Korea can learn from Vietnamese unification. Vietnam also had a younger generation who have not experienced any war, And the Vietnamese unification was initiated by the northern part of the country. From their experience, I saw some beacon of hope for the Korean unification. As you know, the Vietnam was a colony of French. Under the Ho Chi Minh's leadership, the independence war continued for 50 years, and through the countless battles, Vietnam ended colonial rule from the prince. However, the war divided the country between north and the north, and then the unification war started, and with the U.S. intervention, the war became intensified. In 1973, a U.S. Army was withdrawn, and 1974, North Vietnam achieved unification by conquering the South Vietnam. That day is remembered as the Day of Unification. The most noteworthy in this event is that it's the internal victory, even though there is external forces. Korea was divided due to the external forces. However, Vietnam overcame the external forces to achieve internal unification. They take great pride in here. Vietnamese colonial era is not much emphasized as Korea did. The unification is not simply meaning that they overcome external forces, but they achieved unification on their own. I believe internal integration was the driving force of the Vietnamese diplomacy. Within the international dynamics, Vietnam exercised the bamboo diplomacy to have equal distance with the neighboring countries. They took United States as a security partner, China as the largest trading partner. A lot of Vietnamese loved United States as well as President Trump. The United States was the one of the country that involved in the war, but still the Vietnamese people like the country. And China is the largest trading partner of the Vietnam, and Vietnam is very relied on China for economic reasons. And the China shares borderline with the Vietnam. But nevertheless, Vietnamese were able to voice out independent words. With the independent diplomacy, they minimized external forces and achieved the internal unification. That is used as a very convincing narrative and used for the internal integration. This autonomous external relations or diplomacy, Vietnam was able to carve out their own way for unification. With this internal pride and high interest in international relations, Vietnam could find its own position in this dynamics. If you look at the unification process of Vietnam, Vietnam was able to find out their own way. From the outside, the unification process seems to be smooth. However, deeper look shows very different story. The North and the South had a very different background in terms of history. The northern part was greatly affected by China. It has a Confucius culture, and it has a long history of central governance. However, and the South was greatly affected by Buddhism and Hinduism. During the colonial era, they imported capitalist attitude. So the attitude is very practical compared to its northern counterpart. However, the younger generation in the southern Vietnam are more nationalistic. Young generations wear their traditional costume and held the flags. So I was very envious of the scene when they celebrate the unification. I am living in a Delta Mekong area. There I had a conversation with a girl in her 20s. As you see in the screen,
이렇게 개인 소셜 미디어 사진을
the social media, this girl posted this picture in celebration of the 80th anniversary of the unification. Actually, she is a K-pop fan who loves EXO and Baekhyun. As the 50th anniversary comes up, she wore Aojai traditional attire and held the flag. She took a photo with her friends, and she really celebrated the unification with other young friends. So all younger generation was really happy about achieving unification in their history. On September 8th, the 80th anniversary independence was another big festival. In 2025, the northern part of the Vietnam became just one to celebrate the day. This girl just thought that the Independence Day was a holiday. However, with the unification became highlighted in the media, she was able to revisit the meaning and legacy of unification and old generation. It was very like a text-like answer, but she added that her feeling is greatly shared with her peers because through the media, they were able to review their history, and they took the history and translated history into their own young languages. I know that the unification is not popular topic in Korea among young generation. So compared to that, I was very surprised that Vietnamese younger generation has different idea about the unification. I believe so the patriotic sentiment could be brought up through the national matches in sports, and that is also same as Korea. But this lady, this girl, know that unification brought them international and political benefits to Korea. And she was very happy that the Vietnam as a whole to focus on the economic development without wasting any energy with the frustration over division. Now, I would like to say this period is the self-confirmation age. Through this conversation and dialogue, this girl, I learned that the younger generation take unification as positive, and they regard themselves as a part of the unification narrative. So patriotism and the national pride were essential for them. So patriotism is regarded as a natural sentiment among the people that was a great affection toward their hometown and their community. So this atmosphere gave me some hope that the Korea can too change. The social compassion is very distant idea, although it sounds ideal. Unification requires a social sentiment or social compassion. Social compassion, social consensus is not built on its own. However, it cannot be forced or enforced from the outside. It has to be grown naturally. In order to have a social consensus, there would be the active discussion on the social values. Of course, Korea had a very tragic trend after the two inter-Korean summits. The popular or positive sentiment toward the unification could not remain consistent. It was replaced by the negative feeling about unification. So Korean society was fragmented, and there are a lot of forces to take advantage of fragmentation of the society. From here, we can take lessons from Vietnam. Of course, heterogeneity existed in Vietnamese society, However, with the Vietnamese identity and Vietnamese pride were grown to achieve unification. Those feelings were not enforced from the top. Based on their national narrative, those sentiments were homegrown and naturally grown among the people. Young generation does not simply deny any the conservatism or conservative feelings. On their daily life, young people enjoy K-pop and cultural events. However, on the national holidays like Unification Day, they wear their traditional costume and hoist flags to celebrate the day. With unification, they enjoy the elevated national status and the pride. From this, the national pride and the positive sentiments were internalized through the cultural, the civilizational cultivation and cultural cultivation. So they revisit what pains, what sufferings their older generation went through to achieve unification. So social consensus in Vietnam was grown based on the repeated the exercise of national narratives and study of them. So voluntary that became their national asset. Now, Korea does not have a solid consensus on unification throughout the society. So emotional appeal or one-sided efforts cannot achieve unification in Korea. Through the balanced diplomacy, with the concerted support from the outside, we should move toward unification. And that should be considered as a process to settle peace in this region. That role should be taken up by the government. At the same time, the value of the unification has to be stressed and communicated among the younger generation in a different way. And the external influences should be minimized, and the Korean people themselves have to come up with ways to achieve unification. That way, I believe we can build the foundation for the real unification into the future.
네, 감사합니다.
Thank you.
베트남의 사례로 들어보는 통일에 대한
He used the Vietnamese case in thinking about Korean unification. It's not about whether to have achieved unification or not, but he presented what we have forgotten in this process from Vietnamese case. And as you prepare this slide, you may develop some questions and doubts, or you would become emotional in the process. How did you prepare this presentation?
올해 한 3월 정도부터
I was asked to prepare this presentation March this year.
정권 하에서
At that time,
얼마나 전달할 수
I
있을까라는
was very doubtful how much I can deliver this message to the audience, because it was before the change of the government.
베트남에서 바라본 내용들을 갖고 통일해서 얘기를
My
하려고
view
하는데
on the unification based on the Vietnam experience, I was very envious that I asked why we Koreans cannot do that. Fortunately, I saw the change of government in Korea, so I really wanted to add some voices and want to show the direction where we should head toward unification. Luckily and happily, a few days ago, President Lee made a keynote address at UN with the ND initiative. He talked about how to settle peace on the Korean Peninsula. So now it seems that society is getting ready for this discussion. So I don't want to miss this opportunity. And in this important setting in Kim Dae-jung Peace Forum, I feel that it will be very meaningful if I can deliver the cases of Vietnamese unification to the Korean audience.
네, 감사합니다.
Thank you.
어떻게 보면 또 시기가 저희가 이 발표를
So this was very timely presentation. We are very lucky to have that discussion. As I listened to him, I thought, why?
큰 그림이 어떤 통일과 평화의 그 방향으로 가고 있는 것 같은데 이런 뉴스를 보면 댓글이 달리는 걸 보면 사실
I saw a lot of comments on this kind of news, and I monitor the younger generation's community. But the sentiment was very negative. Usually, they don't accept unification in a positive way. Then why is that? I question that to myself. The discourse of the unification is not a really agenda for the young people. That's because the unification for them is too distant, and they did not have experience of making small peace in their daily life, because their daily life is tough. So in order to have a peace in a grand way, we need to be able to enjoy the small peace in our daily lives. And also we have to be trained to have a discussion on common good and implement those actions for the common good.
하면 좋겠는데
That's my wish. However, our younger generation is mattered about the university entrance examination, SAT, and they have to live their daily lives in a tough way. That's why the peace discourse cannot be settled in our daily discussion. Next speaker will be speaking about the Laos case.
변화시키고 있는 이재현 대표님의
Now I'd like to invite our next speaker, Mr. Lee Jaewon, who is working as the CEO of Greengoods in Laos. So how can we move forward together? We can learn from the Laos case. Please welcome our speaker, Mr. Lee, to the podium.
네, 안녕하십니까.
Hello,
발표를
everyone.
맡은 그린굿즈 주식회사의
I am
이재원입니다.
representing Greengoods Laos. My name is Jaewon Lee.
어제 오늘 아침
While
세션도
taking part in the
참
Kim
재밌게
Dae-jung Peace Center, it was very interesting,
들었고요.
and it was a great
저는
learning opportunity
제
for me
이야기를
personally.
들려드릴 거라 어떻게 보면 조금 더
I'm
가벼운
going
마음으로
to
들으실 것
share my
같습니다.
personal
저는
stories,
현재
so no
라오스에서
huge
양구에
pressure
닭을 키우고 있는
on me.
이재원이라고 합니다.
I am a
저는
farmer
오늘 이제
who
라오스
is raising
농촌에서
chicks
발견한
in Laos
평화의
in rural
주제로
villages
이야기를
of
나눠보려고 합니다.
Laos.
우선
I want
저희가 지금
to
하고
talk to
있는
you
일은
about the
단순히
seeds
이제
of
닭만을
peace
키우는
found
건
in
아니고요.
rural Laos.
부족에서는
We do
통해서
not only
지속
raise
가능한
chicks,
변화를
but
만들어보고자
also we
하는
promote
여정을
sustainable changes
담아보았습니다.
through our journey
라오스에 관심을
locally.
가졌던
The
이유는
reason
제가
that I
이제
was
개발협력이라는
interested in
문제를
Laos is
했었고,
because I
코익 활동에서
studied
라오스에 나갔을 때였는데요.
international development through
문제를
cooperation,
해결해
and I went to Laos as part of the KOICA program. And when I got there, I wanted to create sustainable income source for local farmers in Laos. If they wake up early, a little bit earlier, and then work a little bit harder, they may earn more money, but that was not true. When I went to rural villages in Laos, more income cannot be generated just through individual efforts. Let me take some of the examples. Let's say farmers worked hard to grow vegetables, but they couldn't sell them due to lack of transportation, and as freshness declined, no one would buy them and be wasted. And what about the price instability? The prices fluctuate, so you cannot charge for what you can ask for. And even if you have a good agricultural produce, the definition of good agricultural produce is different, one held by consumers and the other one held by farmers. So even if you grow really good agricultural produce, there are limited marketing means for farmers to appeal their products to consumers. That's why I say individual efforts cannot solve the problem that is faced by local farmers. That's why we need a structured and systematic approach to help their lives become better.
기본적으로 농가분들께서 직접
So
구조적인
local
한계를
farmers,
뛰어넘을 수는 없지만
they cannot overcome
일반적으로 이제
structural issues
취약한
on their
생산 기반, 뭐
own.
이렇게 도로가 좋지 않아서
That is
가져가지
because of
못하는
the
거나
weak infrastructure
낮은
and
시장에서
lack of
접근하는 게
transportation
어려운
means
부분,
and poor
그러니까
market
소비자들과
access,
만나는 부분이 어려운 것들,
and
그리고
which deters
더잘
farmers
키우고 싶고 어떻게
to
뭐
meet
이제 비료를 써야
consumers
되고
in a
하는
convenient
그런 교육을
way.
받고 싶은데
And they
이런
do not have
교육을 이제
sufficient
해줄 수 있는
information on which
기관이나
fertilizer
또
that
어디서
they
정보를
should
찾아야
use
되지?
for
그리고
farming.
넘쳐나는
So
인터넷
limited
정보
knowledge
중에서
and
어떤
training
부분은
is
나한테 맞고
another
어떤 부분은
problem.
맞지 않은데
And the news
그걸
you can
취합하는
get from
어려움을
SNS
겪고 있는
platforms like
민중들의 현실을
YouTube,
보았고요.
you
저
do
또한
not know how
당시에는
to filter the right information from
연구를 하다
incorrect
보니
information.
사실 한 줄 보고서에다가
So as a
이러이러한 문제가 있고
researcher,
이렇게
I
하면
can
해결할
just
수
write
있습니다라고
down
글을
what
쓰는
I
건 참
found in my
쉬웠는데
papers and reports.
실제
It's
그
easy
문제를
task.
해결할
However, the
수
more
있는
difficult
나는
task
그런
is
그
how
문제를
can
직면했을
we
때 과연
apply
해결자로서나
such
아니면
learnings
그 문제를 풀기
in
위한 노력을
the
하고 있나?
field. Am I contributing to solving the problem in the field? I myself am just writing a couple of lines in my paper without practical action items that can be practiced in the field. That's why I thought, why don't I take this chance to go out there and do something for local farmers? That's how I came to raise chicks. I wanted to be a problem solver, but I do not see myself as a problem solver no more. I see myself as a companion working together with local farmers in the field. As I said to you before, for our farmers, we provide a structured solution. For example, we help them hatch really good chicks, and after the chicks become chickens, we procure such chickens from farmers. And in the market, farmers promise to raise their chicks and chickens antibiotic-free in a free-range environment, so we help with the marketing phrases and campaigns. And this is our business model. We provide high-quality chicks free of charge to our farmers, and they learn how to raise chicks in a right manner. Of course, they have local knowledge. So in addition to such local knowledge, we provide our know-how. And after chicks grow in a healthy manner, we purchase such chicks from farmers. And the products are branded through our marketing system to meet the end consumers in the market. And then certification will be carried out on behalf of them by our company. For example, HACCP certification and so on. But these are such great products. We connect farmers with consumers in a speedy manner. And there are farmers who do not have initial capital investment money, so we provide the seed money for farmers to make investments at the first step so that they can pay back after getting the income generated by selling their products. These are products and services that we offer in Laos. Eggs, chickens. Sometimes the UN provide technical requests for technical consulting for local farmers by international organizations like UN. So we take such responsibility as well. And there is one big name, a big company named the CP in Southeast Asian countries. It is difficult to become certified vendors for this big conglomerate like CP, and the contracting is written in more advantageous way for these companies like CP. So as far as trust is concerned, small farmers, it is difficult for them to earn consumer trust. So in the case of CP, it is required to make a huge initial investment. But compared against the initial investment that you've got to make, the income generated, therefore from is not as big as you hope it to be.
같은 노동을 투자한 거랑 투자 대비에 비해서는 CP보다 더 높은 수익을
So
보장해드리고 있습니다.
we offer more income and profit for farmers compared against the CP if farmers work with through our company, Greengoods. And also the difference between us and CP is that we help farmers become independent.
농가분들과 함께 5년간 사업을 하면서요.
We have done businesses with local farmers for the past 5 years. For example, Asia Development Bank is one of our shareholders of our company, so that we can continuously expand our business model. And also, we are participating in our UN procurement projects, which ended successfully. And also, we closely work with KOICA. As said to you before, the biggest challenge faced the local farmers is that they want to provide good products to the end consumers. So what we can do is we bring the farmers' products to our processing facilities, which are certified by HACCP and GMP. And our chick farm got a number of certifications, so it's a certified facility. We seek a way to coexist with our farmers. And 80% of farmers are women. Because women, it is difficult for them to leave their village. They have to live with their parents and support their parents. The reason we find great meaning in our business is because when the farmers generate income, the income goes back to household. They use the generated income for tuition and for taking the family out for nice meals and so on. So most of our companies are those locals in their 20s. So we find value in what we do. And the pictures you are seeing on this slide are how the farmers' products like eggs and chickens are weighed by a scale and sold to our company. And for the past 5 years, we have conducted a number of important projects. And in the downtown of Laos, we sell chicken meat to end consumers. At the right bottom picture. Still, we have many things underway, and we run into difficulties and challenges on a daily basis. For example, there are farmers who have worked with us for a long time, but in order to earn more money, they move to another region. And also through production processes, they may run into challenges and difficulties. But what we want to do is engage young locals to grow together. And it is our journey, and we love this journey. That's why we never give up, and we continue to do what we do in Laos. When I was asked to speak in front of you, and I thought myself, what kind of key message should I send to young people in Korea? What kind of message should I give to people who are living in a country that is better off than Laos? Local farmers, they always complain about lack of opportunities, but when I see young Koreans in Korea, they always desire more opportunities as well. So that is a common denominator. So opportunities can be generated through a system, and the driving force behind generating more opportunities could be young people, the youth. The power can be yielded by the youth. So among the social issues, it is not only about redressing poverty, but it is about improving the productivity. When the youth takes interest in solving social issues, it is important for them to understand the social structure and be the agent of change through the journey. We aim to increase the productivity, and we can form
수 있게끔 하고 그 농가의 사례가
cooperative
주변 농가로 퍼져나가게 할 수
for
있습니다.
farmers to come together and
사례적으로
replicate the
공유하는
success
과정에
cases.
있어서 해결되지
And when we
않는
replicate
부분들은
success
저희가 전문가를
cases, if
찾아서
something
교육의
cannot
기회를
be
제공해서
redressed, we can invite experts to
다른
share their
이제
expertise
학습을 통해서
through
성장할 수
training
있도록
and
도와드리고
educational
있습니다.
opportunities.
이런
This
선순환
is one of the
구조가
things that we can
이후에는
do,
저희가 더
and by
도움을
doing
주지
so, we
않아도
can create a
시간만하게
virtuous
계속 이 조직이
circle
돌아가고 있는 방법이
through which
되었습니다.
sustainable
그래서 어떻게
development
보면
among
저희들
farmers
young
can
청년들이
be
만약에 한 가지의
achieved.
문제를 해결한다고 했을 때는
If
조금은 더
young
구조적으로
people
바라봐서
want to
문제
redress a
해결에 좀 참여하는 게
problem, then it is
어떨까라는
wise
생각을
to
갖게
take a
되었습니다.
structured approach.
오늘 제가 사실 드리고 싶었던 얘기는 어떻게
But
보면 이제 큰 담론을
what I
드리고
wanted to
싶은
tell you
얘기보다는
is
제가
that
살아왔고 제가 지금 하고 있는 이야기를 들었기
about
때문에
is about my life story
이
and
이야기를
what I
어떻게
did
보면
in
그냥 편하게 좀
Laos.
들었으면 좋겠다고 생각을 했고요.
I thought it
또
was not a heavy
아무래도
topic for you to
라오스에서
listen
이렇게 하는
to.
활동에
And
꾸준히
the activities in Laos, we ask for your continued interest and support. And thank you so much for giving me this opportunity to talk to you. This would be the end of my presentation. Thank you.
네, 라오스의 이야기 들어볼 수 있었습니다.
It was quite
이재원 대표님
interesting to
감사합니다.
listen to the case in Laos. Thank you.
이재원 대표님의 이 비즈니스에 대한 이야기를
When Mr. Lee talked about the business model, it was such a great opportunity for us to listen to. He didn't say his business model is the best of all. He was just sending a message that his business model exists to solve to help the local farmers locally. But we are not a problem solver. We are there to support them. So just as Mr. Lee said, we are a companion along the journey, whether it is infrastructure development or educational opportunities. Through diverse means, we can help them advance further. And the tools that Mr. Lee is using is the business model of his company, so that problems can be looked into together with locals in Laos.
여러 가지 생각이 드셨을 것 같은데
So what kind of thoughts you want to share while you prepared for your
사실
presentation?
강연 요청을 받았을 때 사실
When I was
이렇게까지
asked
깊게
to
생각을 하면서 양계를 하지
speak,
않았었습니다. 그냥 농가분들한테 어떻게 하면 도움이 될 수 있을까
I was
하고
going to tell you
어떻게 보면
about
이제 왜 처음에는 분명히 제가
how we
이걸
try to
준비하면서
help
사실
the
어떻게
local
보면
farmers.
제가 2019년도에
And
라오스에서 농장을 시작을 했는데
I started
농장을 시작할 당시에
farming
사진들을
business
보면서
back
많은
in
시행착오를 겪어가면서
a
전화를
couple of
했는데
years ago,
그
and we
과정에서
went
제가
through
어떻게
significant
성장해 왔고
changes.
어떻게 보면 이제
And I just wanted to share my personal story and journey
그 과정이
and
저한테
what
너무
I
좋은
wanted to
시간이었고요.
look back.
어떻게 보면 이걸 하면서 들었던 마음은
And prior to this
계속에는 더 많은
forum,
기회가 있고 어떻게 보면 더 뛸 수 있는 부분이
some people might say that there are more opportunities in developing countries,
사실 저희 나이 때 또래들이 이 개발에
but
많이 남아 있질 않더라고요.
there are not so many young people in the development assistance area. So
알리고 싶다.
I want to let others know that there are things that we can do in this sphere.
말을 잘 못해서 뒤로
I'm not a good speaker, so it was quite a burden for me to be a speaker, but I mustered courage to talk about our personal stories so that voices from young people like me can be heard and shared.
너무나 효과적인 흥미로운 이야기를
Thank
들을 수
you
있었습니다.
so much for
그래서
sharing your
저는
interesting
이재원 대표님의
stories.
인상 깊었던 것이
The most impressive part is
기회
that
구조로 만드는 일로 정의했다. 그
peace is
정의부터가
defined as giving equitable opportunities to people. Even if farmers in Laos work really hard, their work cannot be rewarded in an equitable manner. And Mr. Lee said that he wants to be a companion throughout the journey of local
그리고
farmers.
받은 사료를 갖고 또 그린굿즈가 연결한 물류망을 통해서
His company built a supply chain built by Greengoods so that the eggs and chickens raised by local farmers can be priced at the
근데
market
무엇보다 나 혼자
rate.
잘나서가 아니라 나와 함께 동행한 외국에서 온 저 친구 그리고 나의
It can be done thanks
이웃
to the help coming from the neighbors and coming from a foreigner who flew from Korea to Laos to help farmers in Laos.
구현해내고 있는 것이
I think
가장 큰 사례 아닌가?
that
성공 사례
is the
아닌가?
secret recipe to his successful
그리고
business
공정해질
in Laos.
때까지 기다리고 있는 어떤 마음이 아니라
You do not wait for fairness and justice to be realized,
동시에 내 옆에 있는
but at the same
사람들,
time,
동료들과 함께 내가 할 수
You
있는
move
작은
forward
동정의 이해를 만들어가는
one small
과정
step by
자체를
small
만드는 것도
step
어떻게 보면
with
현재
colleagues
제도세들이
and
견지해야
companions
할
next to
두
you.
가지의 양면성이 아닌가, 긍정적인 양면성이 아닌가 싶은
So
생각이
these are the
듭니다.
lessons that we can
이렇게
learn
해서 세
from
분의
his
저희
case.
발표를
It
들어볼
was
수
a great
있었고요.
opportunity to listen
가볍게
from
고정된
three
질문을 한번
panelist members.
나눠보고
So
플로어도
let's
이야기를 나눠보도록 하겠습니다. 먼저
invite
연결해서
them
우리
to share their
재원님께
comments.
질문을 드리고 싶은데
I want to ask a question to Jaewon Lee.
위치의 설정이 가장
You set
인상적이었습니다.
yourself as
그리고
a
그
companion
위치의
for
설정을
local
우리 한국
farmers.
사회에 동영제로서의 그 경험을 어떤 메시지로 좀 전달해
What
주실 수
kind of
있는지
message can you share with the Korean
네,
audience
우선
here?
저희도 사실 처음에는 아까도 말씀드렸던
In the
것처럼
beginning,
해결자가
as I
되려고
explained to
노력을
you,
했었던 것 같아요.
we
어릴 때는. 그리고
try
이
to be a
정의나
problem
문제에 대한
solver
정의나 아니면 문제에
and the
대한
definition of a
자체를 제가
problem
정답이라고 생각을
and the
하고
resolution of a
뛰어들었다고
problem. I thought
사실
I
현장에
can be the
나갈수록
one
사실
who
농사나 이런 부분은
can
저보다
propose
농민분들도
definition
잘
and
지으시고요.
the solution.
어떻게 보면
But
옆에서
when you go out
중요한
there,
정보들을 찾아서
local
드리는
farmers
것 정도
know
하다
more
보니
knowledge and
어느 순간에
expertise,
자연스럽게 이제
and
해결자가 아닌
naturally
동행자가
I
되더라고요. 그리고
repositioned,
더 많은
I and my
사람들이
company
참여하기
repositioned
위해서는
ourselves
어떻게 보면
as
이제
a
한 명의
companion,
뛰어난
not
리더도
a
필요하지만
solver.
그
Sometimes you
리더를
need
위해서
a great
어떻게
leader,
보면
but
이제 더 많은
in
사람들이
most of
같이 걸어갈 수 있게끔
most of
위해서 안보이게끔
cases,
조력해주고 있는
you
동행을
need
동행을
companions
해줄 수
who
있는
can
사람들이
pave the way so
많아져야
a
어떻게
great
보면 일반적인
leadership
사람들이 더
can
많은 이제 어떻게 보면
shine
같이 갈수
along
있지
the way.
않을까라고
So
생각을
our
하게 됐습니다.
company was
그래서
there
사실
to
저희도
create
그
such a
동행자라고 해서 뭐
cooperation
이런 메시지를
mechanism.
고민을 했을 때는
When
사실
I
보이지
came up
않는
with
데서
the
이렇게
message of
좀
being a
동행 역할을 해줄 수
companion,
있는 사람들이 좀 많아지면
I
더
thought
사회가 더
about
밝아지거나 평화가
inviting
더
more
찾아오지
people
않을까라는
to
생각을
join
갖게
in
되었고요.
join
또
efforts
저도
to
사실
as
어떻게 보면
companions
자칫
for better
문제라는 걸 저희가
outcomes.
혼자서 정의하고 혼자서 해결책을 이제
A
쉽게
problem
방안을
cannot be
많은데
defined and
사실
redressed
더
by one
많은
person.
대화의
But
공간과
if you
더
engage
많이
more
토론을
people
하고
in
서로가
more
다른 사실을 인정할 수
in
있는
more
과정에서도
discussions and
동행을 할 수 있는 사람들이 많이
conversations,
있어야
the
사실
more
우리가
the
생각을 정리하고
people,
내 생각이 다를 수 있고
the
또
better
다른 친구들의
outcome
생각도 맞을 수
there
있다는 걸
may
알수
be,
있다고 생각해서
despite the
저는 그런 부분에
differences
있어서는 참
in
동행자가
opinions.
어떻게 보면 맞는
So being a companion is a thing that is very
어떻게
essential.
보면 우리 사회에서도 어떤 생태계라는 표현이 요즘에 또 많이
We use the word ecosystem a lot.
생태계만을 전담하는 어떤 인적, 물적 자원이 상당히 부족함을
Human
느끼면서
resources
일하고
that can
있습니다.
create a right
그래서
ecosystem
저희 개발협력 분야에
are lacking.
저희 이제 30대
Therefore,
중후반 정도 되면은
in
잘
development
남아있지
assistance
않습니다. 그
area,
이유가
there are
뭘까를
not so many
생각해보면
young people who are
동행자가
active in the
너무
sphere.
부족한 것
And the
같다.
reason
특히
behind it is
저희는
because
동행과
decreasing
혹은
number
어떤
of companions,
강물처럼 흘렀으면
and
좋겠는데
we
소나기처럼
want to
흘릅니다.
see
그
opportunities
소나기를
flow
내가
like
취하지
a
못하면
river,
그걸 취할 수
but
있는
it
능력이
only
없으면
comes sporadically,
소외되는 것 같더라고요.
like a
그것이 과연 우리가
rain
평화로
shower.
향하는 길인가에 대해서 다시 한번 생각해 보겠습니다.
So we have to rethink how we can create more opportunities.
감사하고요. 그럼
Thank
우리
you so much.
첫 발표를 해주셨던
Now
우리
I'd like to
종영님께
invite
이어서 질문을
Mr.
드리고
Lee.
싶습니다.
I want to ask
사실
you
이런
a
이야기들을
question.
우리가 더 한국 사회에서 많이 알리려면
In order to raise the awareness of what's happening in other parts of the world, we have to engage the young audience. However, starting a conversation is really difficult because you are afraid of being attacked, and you are afraid of being criticized for the use of certain words.
피와 사륙의 현장에서 그걸 해냈단 말이죠. 그리고
But
중요한 건 그 시작점.
Rwanda was rebuilt based on the sacrifices and the victims of the Rwanda genocide. So how did they start the conversation about reconciliation and forgiveness of the Rwanda genocide?
모두에게 충분한 시간은 당연히 주어야 된다고
Sufficient
생각하는데요.
time shall be given to everyone. So starting point, conversation starter is umuganda. I briefly mentioned about it in my slides. On the last Saturday of every month, everyone comes out and work together. The president has to come out onto the street and do something together. Sweep the street, pick up the trash, and you help others repair houses. So this umuganda system is an opportunity where you can start having conversations, and this is an opportunity where you can start interacting. And through such joint activities, you start to see perpetrators or the other people not as monsters and devils, but as just an ordinary neighbor. Therefore, in order to start a conversation, you have to go out there and meet people in person more often.
라오스에서도 우리 재원님이 일하시는 그 공간에서도
What about
이런
in
사람들을
Laos?
서로 연결하고자 하는
Is there
연대 혹은
any
활동
coalition or social capital or infrastructure or program that generate venues for people to come together and have dialogue?
농경사회로 되어 있어서
Laos is a farming dominated country.
활동이 많고요.
There are many activities that people come out together to do something together.
분들 중에 하나는 이미 조직된 그 조직들이 많이 있었습니다.
There are already organized
저희가 사실
communities.
빠르게 확대해서
That's
전파할 수
how our
있었던
business
장점도
model
있었고,
was
다만
applied
이제,
in a speedy manner.
청년들이 다양한 색깔을 점점 가지고
But
있는데
still,
그 다양한
the
색깔을
young
가지고
generation has different
사실
colors,
좀 한국이 좀 더
and
활발한
they
것 같고요.
still need a
라오스
system to
내에서는
reflect different
다양한
voices and
색깔들의
opinions.
친구들을 이제 모아주는 건 좀 어려움이 있었던
It is
것 같고요.
difficult to
네,
collect
다만
and
그런,
integrate different opinions
토론의 장과
and
이런 부분들이 사실
stances.
필요하다고 생각을 많이
There
들고
is a
있지만
strong need for a
모이는
public
것 외의
discourse.
이상의 발전은 아직은 사실 많이 없어서
But other
어떻게
than
보면 저희
doing
협동조합
physical
같은
activities
경우에도
together,
한 번씩 저희가
there
두
are
달에 한 번씩
limited
정기
venues and
모임을 하는데
opportunities
그 정기 모임에
to share
모이는
different
분들은
opinions.
참 재밌는 수다를 많이 나누세요. 그러면 그 과정에서 사실
Twice a
본인들이
month,
하고
farmers
싶었던
come
얘기들이나
together and to talk
가정사를
about
공유하면서
their
어떻게
personal
보면
stories.
최근
They talk
다가오는
about their
마을
family
행사들 같이
and the
이제
village
준비하시고
events.
어떻게 보면 좀 분위기가 가벼운 환경에서 이렇게
It's a
진행하는데
casual
기존의
meeting
체계에서의
venue.
어떻게 보면 좀 무거운 정도의 이런 곳에서는 토론이
But
사실
for
활발하게
a serious agenda, there are not many discussions that I find.
제가 좀 저희가 그래도 국제개발협력 활동가로서
We are engaged in international development activities, so we have to talk about that topic as well. What we do is involving the word global south. The most important value is organizing the local communities. It's not like a top-down enforcement. The local community organization requires local ownership. They have to raise their own voices. This is what we call the activity of the community organization. This is very essential in international development, and it is regarded as one of important values. Not only for the international organization, it's also important for our society. Korea is an OECD country. We are one of the rich club, but we don't really have to say that the Korea is subject to the international development activity. We have to have our own ownership to organize community network. So it's not the activity targeting the developing countries, but as a cosmopolitan citizen in the world, we need to also engage in the community building. That's what I learned from my activity. I totally agree with you. Yes, community organization. So what is the role of the community members in that activity? If we look at our daily life, our life is filled with work and rest. So we spend our own time on a private matter. Then where is the division line between what is public and what is private? Let's say there is a field in our community. Who has to take care of the common community field? So the public activity requires a lot of efforts from the community members. Why we think that our life is only filled with the work and the consumption? If there is a member who cannot perform these two activities, aren't they the member of the community? Actually, there should be more members who can take care of the public activities. For public activities, we need community organization or community building. For that, we need to gather our forces. Community activities should not just driven toward the monetization, but for the development of the public activities. In the process, having said that, solidarity comes up into my mind. For younger generations, solidarity, the word solidarity is not very closely felt. Yeah, we have a friends, but maybe with friends we can play soccer. However, that is not the example of solidarity. For me, I do not have much experience of performing solidarity in my school days. In Vietnam, there are solidarity activities, whether it is loose or tight. Do you have any case to share with us about the solidarity formation?
연대의 반대말이 뭘까요?
What would be the opposite word of solidarity?
연대의 반대말은 저는 분열이라고 생각합니다.
The opposite word of solidarity is fragmentation.
사회에서 연대의
What is very obviously, the solidarity value is not very appreciated because the society is too much fragmented. There are forces who do not want the national unification. They try to divide our society too much. So looking at that, we need something to control the societal fragmentation. However, that effort should be supported by the institution. Of course, there are many reasons for the lack of solidarity in our solidarity. Of course, we need the Anti-Discrimination Act. And in terms of unification, social consensus is needed to move toward the unification. Rather than unification, people prefer to use integration. North Korea is no longer North Korea. North Korean people call their country as Joseon. The North Korea is a member of UN system, so we have to regard. People say that the North Korea is another state, separate state. Anyway, a lot of discourses are taking place over that. So toward unification, we need form a big trend. With that, we may reduce fragmentation or minimize fragmentation of our society, and that happened in Vietnam. Vietnam is a socialist country, so people may misunderstand that the socialist government may enforce the unification agenda for the people, but however, that is not the case. When I say freedom is not the reckless freedom. You have to take responsibility for the freedom. Or when you say, you have to take responsibility for what you say. So now you have to think about what is the real meaning or real value of freedom. In order to protect freedom, and what should be protected in principle, we have to think about it. So the dialogue and discussions are not popular or widely preferred. So in order to form the solidarity, we need to get rid of the causes for the fragmentation. The democratic sentiment is important. However, rather than make an appeal to the sentiment, we need to build a consensus or positive feeling toward unification to stabilize our life. So rather than the slogan, we need to have a legal or institutional tools and equipment for unification. So solidarity should not be left to the role of the forum, but you said we need to set the rule to get rid of the causes of fragmentation. The fragmentation was sweeping through the country in Rwanda when it was at the war.
통합으로 향하는 길에서
In the Gachacha case, was there any structured or organized division among the public, split towards the unified stance? Tutsi, Hua, those are the ethnic groups, and they all had their respective administrative systems. How many cows do you have? That was the criteria that divided Tutsi from Hutu. Because of such conflicts, the confrontations worsened, and there were genocide, not just the Rwanda genocide we know, but other genocide. When you talk about the division among the people, there were like a certain internal forces in Trame who instigated such division among the people. But away from the division toward coalition, Rwanda was successfully able to make that transition.
세 번째 슬라이드였나요? 취소선을 그었잖아요. 인종 부분에. 그 이유는 이제 르완다는 그냥 루안다입니다.
Now, Rwanda see themselves as Rwanda people, not people belonging to Hutu, Tutsi, or Tuwa. They consider themselves as just one people. That was the biggest contributor to coalition away from division.
여기까지로 잠깐 접어두고 혹시 플로어에서 질문
Is there any question from the floor? We can entertain a number of questions.
맨 앞에
제가 이번 한국 여행 굉장히 잘했다 하는 느낌을
I feel so lucky to come to Korea this time. I am very moved and wowed, and almost the tears formed in my eyes. While listening to the young generation, I was overwhelmed by the meaning of having this youth roundtable. Away from division towards coalition is a timely topic, a moving topic. Thank you so much. One more thing that I'd like to invite everyone to think about is cases from Laos, Vietnam, and Rwanda. It's about building a society, a harmonious society. This is a quite contrast to the German case. In Germany, it was about how Germans were able to achieve a peaceful unification. Now, Vietnam was able to achieve unification through a war. It is very contrasting because in your countries, it is about building peace. And through war. And when we ask people to learn from Vietnam, they say, what should we learn from a country that achieved unification through war? That's why they turn attention to the German case. In Germany, social integration has not been achieved. So they think about division first, which slows down the discussions. So cases from 3 countries, the growth stories and growth momentum are the fuel for coalition. They serve as the foundation for building coalition. So if growth stories in those countries, even though the speed may be small, but if locals have the hope of having a better future, coalition would come easily. So when we talk about unification in Korea, we should encourage people to, and especially young people, to have hope for a better future. So that's what we can learn from the cases of those countries. That is not a question, but a comment that I wanted to share with you.
네, 제가 대표해서 감히 말씀드리겠습니다. 정말 너무 감사드리고요.
On behalf of the panel, I would like to say thank you. In the previous session, there was a presentation about the Korean Peninsula and unification. And there, I felt that there are people who talk differently about the same topic. And I also think that how Vietnamese people would talk about unification. Unification was achieved through war in Vietnam. Even without war, Vietnam would be able to achieve unification because I know that Vietnam has that energy. And another thing is that Korea, as one of the Asian countries, has a community-based culture. That culture should be maintained. In South Korea, the Western culture is predominant and individualized culture is also sweeping through. So community culture is lost a bit. So the community-based unification would not be, could be skeptical in my thinking. In Korea, one of the Asian countries, can learn things from Vietnamese experience. Although the unification is achieved through the way in Vietnam, however, the internalization was conducted through the Asian way in Vietnam. That is the very different point compared to German unification. Compared to Rwanda and Laos, they would do their own story. So my wife is Vietnamese. It's not about her. However, culturally and for many fronts, we share the commonalities with Vietnam. That's why I say we can learn a lot from Vietnam. Thank you. Any other question from the floor?
네. 사실 방금 하시는 대화를 들으면서
As I listened to this dialogue, something was come up into my mind. We are discussing solidarity. What's more important is to put what word will be standing in front of the word solidarity. We need solidarity that does not isolate anyone. About 10 years ago, my family was poor, so I had to work in a factory. At that time, I was lonely. I felt that my colleagues and myself were isolated from the society. This isolation may ensue the hatred and some negative feeling. A lot of the information was acquired through online community. At that time, the online community was dominated by the fraudulent or the manipulation initiated by the online communities as well as Korea CIA. These isolated people cannot be regarded sentimentally as a part of the society, and they feel themselves as a loser. So they have to find their own ways to navigate through this society. Their education is not better than other people. So at that time, my pride was self-esteem was very low. So the solidarity we need is in the form of the solidarity without isolation. So we should not, the people, remain isolated from the community. We have to detect blind spots and try to get rid of them. And solidarity spirit should be expanded. So in the name of the international assistance, international aid, we are trying to spot the blind spots in the international solidarity. It's about time is almost up. So let me close. Let me wrap up this session. The title of this roundtable is the people making peace lived there. From Rwanda, seeking for forgiveness and cooperation, there were people there. It was not the courthouse, it was not the grand building. Only the neighbors, community members were living there. In Vietnam, there were young generations who have not experienced war, but they accepted unification with pride. It's not just a simple integration between the South and North. However, they celebrate unification in their daily lives. They took unification for granted, and they find their pride and identity from that event. In Laos, even though there is a poverty who cannot be rewarded for their efforts, however, they are cooperating by sharing the resources, and they develop their own self-esteem that they contribute to their community on their own by doing their own business. I believe these kind of activities planted the seed for their pride.
문장은 꼭 멀리 떨어진 곳에서만 적용되는 게 아닐지 모릅니다. 한국 사회에도
in the Korean society too, in our life too, there are people who build the peace.
가진 사람과 대화를 이어가려 애쓰는 사람이 있고,
There are people who try to have a dialogue with the people with different
기회가
ideas.
닫힌 곳에서 새로운 통로.
And if opportunities is closed, there are people who try to carve out new paths, new ways. If these people are getting together, then they will reflect on their past. They would say that in the past there was a lot of people killing themselves. However, we are now living in a better world. That's my hope. I believe today planted the seed for that better future. So today we heard a lot of stories that are not easily found in the Korean community, and their experience and their fruit can be imported to the Korean community, which will produce another seed for a better outcome. And then someday we will live in a society where freedom is flowing like a river. The September 26, 2025 will be a very pleasant day where we revisited the ideas of
네,
President
대단히
Kim Dae-jung.
감사합니다. 이제 자리로
Thank you.
모시도록 하겠습니다.